I hear you, Sammy. So Bruce has joined us now.
Yes, hi Bruce.
Sammy.
Hi there. Sorry about that. There was there overlap on this.
No worries.
Gotcha.
So thank you guys for taking the time to hang out. And I have questions obviously for both of you, and I have questions individually for you. But if you ever want to feel like to chime in or add something, obviously there's no rules. So
It's the new COVID thing.
yeah, you know what I mean? I'm just gonna hit record and then we'll see what happens basically. So we
Okay.
just white knuckle it until it's done. That's good.
Sounds good, Sammy.
All right.
Yo, welcome to my Summer Lair. I am your host, Sammy, more graphic than design, Younan. Today's guest is the esteemed Bruce Mao, whose business card reads designer, innovator, and educator. Joining us to talk about those three dynamic practices is Bruce's creative partner and wife, Bisi Williams. But first, there's always a first. We gotta talk about Mao. Not the man, rather the documentary. It's directed by Benjamin and Jonah Bergman. Mao is the first ever feature-length Bruce Mao documentary. You know you're doing cool things with cool people when your work logically prompts a documentary. Now, to quote the media release, the film explores the untold story of his unlikely rise in the creative world and ever optimistic push to expand the boundaries of design. We tell the story of his incredible career from Mecca to MoMA, from Guatemala to Coca-Cola, and his most important project yet, his own life. So yeah, let's get into his documentary life, talk to his charming wife, and understand how he deals with strife. No stress, this podcast is not rife with rhymes. I want to start with this. Bruce, you had a great line in the doc about how before your daughter was 2 years old, she'd visited all these worldwide cities. She'd been everywhere basically. And it partly reflects the nature of your work, right? You guys are like Batman and Robin. You go from town to town, design superheroes, right? So how has that pandemic experience been for you? Not just in terms of slowing down, but is it giving you more time to think? Is the global pause inspiring? Because this is affecting everybody. So is it inspiring in a way that will hopefully prompt some rethinking and some massive change? See what I did there?
Yeah, I think it will. It certainly has for us. It's been, I've been in this room for over a year. So it's been a, quite extraordinary experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've had dinner with our children every night for the last year, which, they were all at college when this broke. And so having them all home and with us for the whole year has been, quite a wonderful experience. It's with its own kind of harrowing cause, but it's been quite a lovely experience in that respect. And we're very fortunate to have, a lovely place, and it's not been a bad, that part of it hasn't been bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something to not connect with people. It's so much a part of our work and our life, and being other places and working with people. As you said, it's really what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part of it has been quite challenging. What has saved us in a way is that we've worked with so many people over the years that a lot of the projects we're doing, in the pandemic, are projects with people that we've worked with before. Mm-hmm. So we know them. You don't have to do that kind of introductory. That introductory part is hard to do, even on Zoom or Skype or anything.
You have a shorthand now, is basically what you're saying, right? Like Scorsese and De Niro working together after all these years.
I've worked with Sanford Quinter, who was one of the editors of Zone for almost 40 years, and it's wonderful to work with him again.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also comes from trust too, right? And so, that massive change name, when we were sort of thinking about what we were going to do together and where is our purpose. And maybe people thought, well, you're a little bit grandiose with the massive change thing, but we knew that there were massive problems and massive opportunities in the world. And what was strange was we're here at the intersection of change and design. So we're super blessed. The phone rings because the problems are here. People really want to look at things and redesign them. And these are people who've always been thinking kind of big. So it was scary, but it was also comforting. It was like, yes, we also can be of service. We can think about these things. And so that pause of reimagining how we're going to work, what we're going to work on, how we're going to design our time. We're talking about the boundaries, the 24-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of kind of dovetailed into, oh, we can still work on what we love, do those big projects, but we can manage it. And we're not jumping on a plane and we're here. And you build those intimacies, which is kind of cool. So that has been new, I think, too, and nice, I think. That's the icing on the pandemic cake, if you will.
All right, we'll go with that. And one of the projects I want to talk about is the documentary. And Bruce, you're often known as like an optimist and a futurist. So I'm kind of curious, why did you want to make a documentary that mainly looks back at your origins, right? Like, it almost feels like it's releasing a greatest hits album rather than like an album of new songs.
Well, first of all, I didn't want to make a film at all.
Okay.
And I didn't make a film. Benji and Jonah made the film. So it's really their project. I thought they were very smart and really quite nuanced. And I thought they would do a good job. And I think they really did a wonderful job.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it is a story. It's a story of a way of life. And I think, inevitably, you want to know how the story started. And you don't know how the story is going to end.
Yeah, to be continued.
And knock on wood.
Yeah. Are you hoping for any specific effect or like a response to the documentary?
Not really. I think the one reason that we agreed to participate is we thought it would be important to get the principles of MC24 to as many people as possible. I think the challenges that we now face are just increasingly urgent, and we know that we've got a very productive and effective methodology that anyone can learn. You don't have to be a designer. And so we thought if we could put those ideas into the public beyond designers, beyond the people that we would normally talk to, that could be really an important thing to do.
And I think also part of it was we really didn't want to do it. And then there was a moment where, I mean, it's really nerve-wracking, right? To be on the other side and be vulnerable and have people ask you things and not have any control, because it's not our project at all. It's their vision.
Mm-hmm.
So that trust is really important. So we were like, okay, we're going to trust you. And that's a weird experience, I think for us. But we realized we ask our clients to do that too. And they would be careful. But the thing for me that I thought was really important was, as design keeps evolving, most people think it's like, ta-da, it's perfect, it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you see an art movie, it's always kind of weird and fake. Like they're tearing paper, they're drawing, and there's all these things, these kind of tropes. And this I thought was, well, this is going to be hard, right? We're going to show the process. And a large number of the projects that we work on, we can't talk about. When we do, it takes like 5 or 10 years. And so to understand that things take time and they stop and they start, and then, it's really gratifying. I think that that's also what I thought was interesting that they captured was the process. So you didn't see Bruce doodling or anything like that.
Yeah, and part of that process, though, and one of the terms that both of you get labeled with is curators and curation. You guys are associated with that. Like, based on your practices and tools, what does curation mean to you? And has that kind of evolved the way that you've kind of evolved the word designer?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, the practice of design is a curatorial methodology. In other words, you're taking things and ordering them and sequencing them, putting them in a kind of story. And that's essentially what curation is.
Hmm.
If you think about, when we did Massive Change, we created a model that we call design economies, and we ordered the whole exhibition around 10 of these design economies and curated projects and products and design practice into these 10 kind of organizing concepts. When I do a book or when I'm working on something, that is a new project, I essentially do the same kind of thinking process. I set up a structure and then I order the content into a sequence that is going to inspire people, touch them emotionally, change them, make them aware of something new. I think the kind of core methodology is very similar.
Yeah, cool. Bisi, I want to talk to you for a second because like this is an interesting time in America. There's a lot of like upheaval, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? So, as the chief insights officer for Massive Change, how are you viewing the current cultural movements? One of the beliefs basically is that there should be more design and design leads to inspiration. Like, do you feel that these movements have enough quote unquote design to kind of get them over to the finish line, to cross the finish line?
Sammy, you're asking the hard questions. Okay, so
We're gonna go back to the documentary though, but because your work is
no,
interesting, so it's always like, let's get into this stuff.
no, this is important, Sammy. I think that's one of the reasons why we're here in Chicago. I think we've always had a love affair with America, and we know that the problems of the world are complex. And one of the roles of a designer is to listen and learn. And you realize year by year how complex the Black Lives Matter is, and gay rights and social injustice issues, and to look at them from a comprehensive design perspective. Um, I think that there are tools for design that could be effective in having people achieve, peace and harmony and social equity and justice. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this, another Canadian who's a designer,
Mm.
and he said, BC, racism and sexism and classism, those are design constructs. We can actually redesign them. It's that simple. And that for me is really powerful. So I think as a designer and as a person of color and a woman, et cetera, part of it is there are ways to engage differently, acknowledge how different and difficult it is, but these are design constructs and they can be redesigned. You built them before, you can unbuild them and you can redo them. And I know that sounds naive, but I also feel that the graphic elements of some of these movements, but also the galvanizing of people, you'll always find that the design and design communication is always at the forefront of any revolution or any change making, right? Because they care, designers care, people want to get the message across, they need to be clear, and they're at the forefront of change. So I'm optimistic. I am. It's tough, but I am optimistic that we will make our way through.
So then, for both of you, then what are your metrics for hope? Like for your work, you draw multiple sources, right? For design inspiration, like you basically are human blenders, right? You take a bunch of ideas. So what about your sources for hope?
My kids, our kids, like I think one of the reasons why we did Massive Change together is like, I call them our little, they're no longer little, but they're the future. They're the hope. And for them, our work is to design a platform and a pipeline, a way forward. We're not going to solve it all, but it's our job to give them tools. And every day you look around, like there are moments of beauty and hope and inspiration if you turn around, right? And I know this sounds Pollyannish, but it's the truth. We have education, we do have justice, we do have recourse, right? And human ingenuity, the way that the young people are moving, it's just they're not going to take a lot of that stuff anymore, and we just have to support them and move ahead. There's a new energy and regime coming in, I feel. Bruce, what do you think?
Well, I also think that, at the core of our method, and really at the core of design method, is empathy. In other words, we don't work on our problems. We work on other people's problems. People come to us with, sometimes very weird problems that we never even could have imagined having to deal with. And our job is to help them to deal with it. And that means that we have to start with really an understanding of their experience. Mm-hmm. And if you think of, all the kind of challenges that we face right now, the common denominator is a lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. It's an inability to understand the experience of another form of life, mm-hmm. whether it's racism or white nationalism or an inability to understand climate change and support natural systems and ecologies. The common denominator there is an inability to understand the experience of other life. And I think that what we have in a design method is a core methodology of empathy. And I think the more that we could apply that to the challenges that we face, the better the results will be. So I think the way out of the mess that we created is by design.
Yeah, I think sometimes people kind of settle for sympathy rather than empathy, right? Because sympathy is like, oh, that sucks. Yeah. Like, I feel bad that somebody was racist to you or sexist to you, right? And you can kind of shrug and then you're kind of done. You can roll over and take a nap. But empathy involves, like you said, listening and kind of actually being involved in somebody's life or their experience.
Yeah. And I go further, Sammy. I go to compassion. I mean, I know that's it. Like for me, it's like I get it, that's bad. But we can do something. There's a solution. Like I feel like I think you're right. You go through all of it. But for me, I guess I just go straight to like solution. And I think maybe sometimes I can hold it a little longer, but I'm like, you can fix that. You can fix that. That could be better. Like, like, come on, like let's raise the bar, really. And so that's also part of it, I think.
And is that what prompted then like the Massive Change Network? Because network is an interesting word, right? Like it could be like it's an arrangement as well as a system of interconnected individuals. So it's pretty clever.
Yeah. And I would say the network effect is starting to work now, the way that we've imagined it, because the scale of the projects that we're working on, the problems now, if you can imagine post-pandemic, are so huge that it's our one studio can't solve it. And so we are actually using that network effect of multiple studios, with multiple intelligences, if you will, Renaissance teams of groups and groups of people to really crack complex problems. And that's really fun. And that was the kind of dream that we had, 10 years ago. And the dream is kind of a reality. And what I love is that Bruce is really still the curator and the maestro. So I may set the table and we think, well, let's play together in here and here and here. Mm-hmm. But still, there's a great kind of laddering that happens with Bruce and his ability to take multiple complex teams with multiple skill sets and deploy them, and get alignment. So that's really getting fun, I would say. And that's just in the last little while. Bruce, you should ask Bruce the network question. He used to bother me. He's a Bisi network. I'm like, let's just work on what we have right here. And now it's like, no, there's a network.
It is an important part of what we do. I mean, we don't do it all, and we don't pretend to do it all. But if you reach out, the people that are available, I mean, if you think about who we can work with today. I mean, people take for granted how easy it is to connect with other people. I grew up before computers were introduced to the workplace. Mm-hmm. When I started working, it was still in the Gutenberg era. we were using hot. I'm serious. Yeah. We were using hot metal type, the way that Gutenberg did. Mm-hmm. And so Uh, but today you can, I mean, we can contact practically anyone of any expertise that we need and bring them together to solve problems. And I think that for me was why, the network concept is so important. That it's, we are actually a very small group of people, but we can reach out and bring together the most amazing talent on the planet to take on, really vexing problems. And what's interesting about that approach is that you don't start with a solution that you're trying to apply. You start with the problem and say, how do we design a solution that's really uniquely organized around this problem? And that makes for a much different caliber of team and a much more focused application of work and a much better outcome.
And part of what you guys are talking about too is collaboration. And is marriage different from collaboration? Or is it same? Or did I get you guys in trouble, or like should we
No,
just
I mean,
No, on the contrary.
gosh, no, I mean,
Like, that's a collaboration, let me
That's a
tell you.
I can imagine, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's an ebb and a flow, you know. I mean, I think like any collaboration, it's a design construct. It's like a double helix, you know. And sometimes you're in harness, and sometimes you're not. And I think that sort of tension of in and out, in alignment, actually is the stories that you tell that make your life interesting, and that's also the stories that you tell in and out, that not only help inform your life, right? A life of ideas, a life of fun, and so on, but that also informs the work, that we have our own lanes. And so I think you have to communicate when you're collaborating. And I think that there are moments when you're like dancing, sometimes one leads and the other one has to follow. And Bruce, how's my following? It's like, it's like, but it's fun. I think that Bruce is like one of the smartest guys on the planet, and I learn from him every single day. So for me, it's a real blessing, actually. I mean, and I say this sincerely, and he pulls stuff out and he knows stuff that it's like, wow, that's really cool. And so that's surprising. So that's part of the collaboration, that he's interesting and smart and just has ideas and solutions all the time. So that's a good collaborator to have.
And the feeling is mutual. I mean, Bisi comes from a kind of history and literature perspective that I don't have. And so, anything I suggest, she can tell you what the source of it is. Historically and from a literary perspective. And it is so exciting to see. I mean, she has a mind that is just unlimited. And it's very fun to watch on Zoom calls how people are reacting to this kind of incredible mind that is just so inventive and surprising, and can kind of take language to places that I just don't have the power to do that.
But what's really interesting, if you think about Freak the Mighty, maybe we're like one whole person, because Bruce, in his visual language, his historicism, and with form, is a staggering thing too. I mean, his recall across cultures and genres, etc. So it's fascinating because it's always learning. And I think where we intersect is a love of books and reading, right? And it's always a big idea. So ultimately, it always comes back down to what's the idea that makes, I think, it exciting. And our practice is about ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, the driving force. And so far, it hasn't gotten old yet.
Okay. And in terms of the big ideas, and kind of connected to marriage, is like commitment. I don't feel like we kind of talk enough about commitment. Like, you can have big ideas, but if you don't commit to them or follow through on any of them, then it's just like they're kind of useless, right? Like, I know with NBA players, we talk about practice and how often they're in the gym, but they really have to be committed to like being this high school kid. I'm going to get to the NBA. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to make the sacrifices. And that's different than necessarily practice. So would you also then focus or recognize that commitment is like kind of one of the bedrock principles of all your principles?
Sammy, you hit it. It's actually integrity is it, I think is really huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's it. And values. I think, shared values. You can do a large number of things, you can weather anything, but if your values aren't aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that's the deal breaker. That's from my perspective. And our values are generally almost 90% aligned. Sometimes we don't agree on the same things. It's splitting hairs, but it's values. That's what gets you through, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I often tell our girls, you can't win if you're not in the game. Right? It takes commitment, and you just have to be in the long game. Like you just have to have the long game,
Mm-hmm.
because many things that we're trying to do,
Mhm.
like they're just not. We can't get them done right now. It might take 5 or 10 years to get certain kinds of things done, but you've got to have the staying power to stay in the game, because it's so easy to kind of get frustrated, walk out, give up, stop it, and just throw up your hands. That's not a design method.
Mm-hmm.
A design method is to keep at it, keep working. I never give up. I'm like, I've been, I started projects 30 years ago that I'm still working on,
Yeah.
and I still haven't figured out how to do them. But I'm going to eventually, and you just have to stay in the game, and it's such an important part of our work. I never would have thought that stamina
That's
would
true.
be an important part of design,
Yeah.
but it really is. Like you have to stay in the game, and it's so easy to get kicked out.
But
To kick yourself out.
but not just more than stamina, but also like getting back up. Because I would assume, especially with a lot of the social issues and things that you guys are dealing with, you get a lot of dashed hopes or setbacks or frustrations, or even projects just didn't work out the way that you wanted. So
Yeah.
Huh.
are you finding it, like, after like decades of all this work, are you still finding it easy to get up off to the mat when you get your dashed hopes, or or do you lay there
Yes,
a little
yes.
longer?
The interesting thing is that we're working with these incredible people at UT Dallas Center for Brain Health, and really exploring and researching the neuroscience of massive change.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it turns out that you can control the kinds of ideas you have by thinking in the right way. In other words, when you're inspired,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about your neuropharmacy, that your brain actually creates chemicals. Right? It creates drugs that go into your brain and kind of help you work in a certain way. And when you're inspired, you can get through all kinds of barriers that would otherwise stop you.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So thinking optimistically is a methodology. It's just not just a personality. I'm not by personality inclined to do that. It's a method, and you have to actually apply the method. Try thinking optimistically, and you'll see that you have you have much more capacity than you imagine.
I think that, just to add on that, because sometimes, like any skill, some people have more, you're faster, stronger, whatever. But it's been fascinating really looking at the neuroscience, and you wonder what makes people tick, right? And we talk about it in this work because we take a large number of risks, and sometimes you're gonna fall. Sometimes you are gonna bump yourself. But the crazy thing is you learn, you get up and you redo it, and you get an opportunity. I mean, I feel it, with huge gratitude that we get a chance to redo it again. Sometimes things don't work, and you're like, why didn't it work? And then we get the gift of, oh, you know, now I see maybe I'd done this and this and this, but also just recognizing like people are really beautiful and complex and dynamic. And to your point, Sammy, like there's sometimes with people, that they should go here with all your heart and all your soul, and they can't get there. And it's sometimes heartbreaking because you're thinking, if you don't move, you're gonna fail. I can see you fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying, and you're it squeezes your heart. And But then you learn, okay, it's not a bad thing because they move, and you have to sort of, again, that rhythm. Eventually, they come around, or they don't. But like, we're hardwired for adventure. We're not hardwired for like maintenance and plumbing, and we want to learn that too. It's like, yeah, like, we like the big idea, it's like
Yeah.
cool. And we don't want to like do the ledgers, right?
Mhm.
So I think choosing, also your joy too is a blessing as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
choose well your projects, choose well your partner, like really, really work on what you love. Then it just keeps growing. And that's something that I know people say, oh, you're so Pollyanna, but it's really true. Like, I can't think of another way. Like, think of how much joy you've had in your heart doing something that you absolutely don't want to do, even if you fake it.
Hmm.
How many times do you want to do it? Like, you love what you do, right?
Yeah, I do. And what you're talking about too reminds me of Steve Kerr when he was hired to coach the Warriors. One of the things he said was like, "Look, we're gonna do obviously basketball. And we're gonna do practices this way, or whatever." But he said the hallmark of the team is that we're going to play with joy. We are playing basketball for a living, right? So
Yeah.
yes, yes, we're gonna win championships, and yes, we're going to practice, and practices will be hard, and all these things. They're going to do the hard things too, but they want to play with joy. And you can see that with Curry and the way that he's
Yeah.
shooting and having fun. And like, it's a lot different than like LeBron or some of the other players. And that's really what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. Thank you for that, because that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Play with joy. That's a great,
Great joy. I
Play
love
with joy.
that.
good way of thinking.
And then, so just two more questions and then we'll wrap up. But in the documentary, Bruce, I guess the flip side of joy too, or connected to joy, is optimism. And one of the things that was interesting is one of the quotes in the documentary is that, Bruce, you get accused accused of being an optimist. And I want to know if there's a difference between like optimism and ambition, because what you guys are talking about is big ideas, and it's one thing to like, have hope for the world, or that we're going to figure out climate change or something like that. But is there a difference between optimism and ambition?
Well, I think that optimism is scalable. In other words, you don't have to have a massive ambition to be optimistic. Um, like, the reality is that a lot of the things that we're going to solve over in the coming decades, especially in the next decade, are things that will require a lot of little things. A lot of good small wins, and those are really important. I mean, that's how we're going to change things. And collectively, we'll make massive change, but individually, we can make small change and really have a massive impact over time. So for me, the optimism isn't only about big things. We can be optimistic about our day. We can be optimistic about our life. Our what we're going to eat tonight. It can be, you can kind of scale it. But I think the important thing is really to find an optimistic methodology that is based in fact. And this is such an important thing. You're right. I get accused of being optimistic, and
Accused and judged
David
at the
said I
same
was
time, right? So
Oh,
yeah.
the judgment.
David Vernon said I was irrationally optimistic. And I said, actually, you're more optimistic than me. You've done more than me, and doing things is a fundamentally optimistic act. When you do something, you believe that there's going to be someone on the other end of it who's going to say, I'm going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to take my time to kind of download your song and play it and go to your show. And I think that, I think what's really tragic is that we think being creative is being critical, and we equate critical with negative. Critical is neutral. So, like, we've conflated critical and negative. Critical is not negative, it's neutral. In other words, I want analysis. I want the data. I want to know what's really going on. What are the facts that I can count on? And then I'm going to make decisions based on those facts. And I'm going to look for the opportunity. And when I'm looking for the opportunity, if I'm looking for it, I can see it. I can find it. If I don't believe there is opportunity, I'll never find it. And so the kind of logic of it is pretty straightforward, that the only possible way of contributing is to be optimistic. As I think it was Henry Ford who said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
So, last question then, kind of following up on that idea of optimism and even Henry Ford, as Canadians, do you guys still believe in America as an idea? Like, America was always kind of an idea more than just a country, right? With the innovation and the rebellion and all these kind of things. Like Ireland, I'm from Egypt. Like, these are just countries. They're great countries, but they're just countries. But America was always kind of like presented as this idea, and it's a big idea too. So, as people who are interested in big ideas, do you still believe in America as a big idea now more than ever, perhaps?
I still do. I'll let Bisi answer for herself. I certainly do. And I think that what we've seen over the last few months is America really reasserting itself as an idea against the kind of madness that we've lived through for the last 4 years. And so, America, one of my favorite lines about America is that Americans always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possibility.
That should be the country slogan.
That's a Canadian way of looking at it. And I think that America is so incredible in so many ways. Like, you think about what it has accomplished in the world and what it has contributed. And it is a magnet for talent and resources and energy and intelligence. But there's a dimension of it that is really problematic. And that dimension has asserted itself over the last 4 years and more, in fact. But it's being dealt with. It's, I'm confident that the good will win in this case. And that, even though there will be lots of bad, that in the long run, the good will win.
Yeah, I always think that history is on the side of progressives. I think that it just happens. We just progress. And I'm bullish on America too. I mean, sometimes it's a real eye opener. But on the other hand, America always comes up with solutions. No, it just is, like they have ways of innovating things, and things leak and they get out over here and they'll find other ways around it. And it's that continual inventiveness, even under the most incredible circumstances, I find that it gives me hope and optimism. And I root for people too, There's a combination of just there's a blindness, but then there's also this acceptance and accelerating of people or things or ideas that sometimes are not on the side of good, but on the side of good, that amplify and grow and that are ingenious. And it makes me think, wow, that's so cool. Like, and so it's that little streak of rebellion a little bit. I mean, they're a revolutionary culture. And, in a revolutionary culture, at some points when they feel the constraints, they give themselves natural permission to try something and do something different. And that's also kind of a design construct. I mean, everything about America, the mythology, the story, it's all designed, and it's a story, and you accept it and you embrace it and you believe it. And these are the stories we tell ourselves. And it's one that's always striving and trying to do better, even if it's not perfect. You know what I mean? And I've learned sometimes maybe perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that you guys are so patient too with all this. I get impatient waiting for the bus. So for the things that you're dealing with and how slow certain people are, or slow certain governments can be, or corporations, like you worked with all kinds of people at all different levels. I just can't imagine just having that level of patience. And Bisi, as you said, like knowing that you have the right perspective, or you're waiting for somebody to change. You're like, an analogy of what you're talking about is like, if you have a relative who smokes, right? They've made a terrible life decision that's going to cost them their health later down the road. But you can yell at them and you can hide their smokes and you can be mean and you could do these things. But at the end of the day, if they don't choose to stop smoking, then like that's the risk that they pay. So, but it's that patience of like, waiting for that person to get to that point where they want to stop smoking. I don't know how you guys do it. That's incredible.
Our work is like carving Jello with a chainsaw. We can't go for the details.
Yeah. All right. I have nothing else to do to follow up with that after that. So that's perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Bruce and Bisi, for just hanging out and just like talking. And we covered quite a bit, right? We covered America as an idea. We covered the Massive Change Network, and we covered the cool documentary. So
Yes.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy, for those great questions. You kind of really provoked our thinking, and we can't wait to hear the interview and read it. It'd be great.
yeah,
Thank
you.
for
Thank
calling
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing some home. We love Toronto.
So hopefully, yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll run into you guys down on like Yonge Street or something, like when everything opens up again. Like,
Dude, I can't wait. I'll see you at Chironi's.
right? There you go. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye, Betsy.
Yo, if food for thought was a real thing, then this My Summer Lair conversation was a heavy meal. I'm full. And I am also Sammy. That was designer Bruce Mao and Bruce's creative partner and wife, Bisi Williams. The documentary to see them both in action is Mao. Highly recommended viewing for anyone who practices or sells creativity. As for when they were discussing optimism and empathy, it generated a couple of observations. While there's no accurate way to measure it, empathy appears to have become almost like a black market currency. It's like we almost need a TED Talk or like some sort of call to action or a call to return to empathy. Or at least some of the ways to recognize the symptoms of compassion fatigue that often leads to a decline in the quality of care. There's like a wonderful disconnect when you travel. You maximize your time. You spend your days planning with a purpose, a dedication. You want to see this museum. You want to hear this history of a popular tourist attraction. You want to discover a unique setting for lunch. You're disconnected from day-to-day life for an active lifestyle fueled by curiosity. Day-to-day life, regular life, can be passive. The delayed commute to work, watching TV news, or consuming the unregulated emotions of Twitter. It's just a bombardment that, left unchecked, can naturally produce despair. And rarely does it produce fruitful reflection, much less hope. I'd be curious to know if social media hastens compassion fatigue or if it erodes empathy, if you can make a direct line between those two things. Which, yeah, granted, is an odd way to end this episode, as I'm going to ask you to follow me on social media. I'm not part of the problem. I'm not part of the solution at all. I'm quite very much part of the problem. So yeah, follow me on social media because I don't know why anymore. My Summer Lair for all three. This episode's social media question is: what's your favorite Bruce Mao work? Or if you're extra nerdy, which of his MC24 principles, his design principles, is your favorite? You got 24 to choose from. Let me know. My Summer Lair for all three for IG, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to me in the Netflix world. Design, yo.